lesson you're going to learn how to give probability as a fraction. Now, we've talked about fractions and what fractions mean, but now we're going to use fractions as we talk about probabilities. A mathematical probability, here's a definition. A mathematical probability is a comparison of the number of favorable outcomes to the number of possible outcomes. Sounds really fancy, but it's really just when you compare the number of times something could happen to the number of times that it does happen, and which is more favorable. Is it more likely, less likely, equally likely? You're going to compare that amount to how many there are possible outcomes in all. The probability of an event can be written as a fraction, and that's what we're going to look at. Alright, I have a color wheel here, and this color wheel has 5 equally likely color outcomes. That means that each of these 5 spaces has a different color, and each of those spaces are the same size. We have purple, yellow, red, blue, and green. So if I spin my spinner, it's equally likely, if my spinner's laying flat, that I will get any of those colors because each section is the same size. Well, I want to know, what's the probability of the spinner landing on red when I spin it? Well, the probability of red is 1/5. Right, 1/5, because one of my 5 sections is red. One favorable outcome, that's what I want. I want it to land on red. That's what I want. My favorable outcome is red, and there's only one chance that it can land on red. How many total possible outcomes are there? Well, I've got blue, green, purple, yellow, and red. Those are all of my possible. You cannot forget your favorable outcome when you're counting all of your possible. I have one favorable, but there are 5 possible, 5 possible outcomes. So the probability that my spinner will land on red is 1/5. Probability of the spinner stopping on red is 1/5, or you could say 1 out of 5. If your directions are to give your answer as a fraction, make sure you write it as 1/5. I'm going to pull this off because I'm going to use it again. Alright, I only have one of those. Probability is a fraction. The probability of an event occurring can be expressed as 0, 1, or as a fraction between 0 and 1. Okay? So if I were to put my probability on a number line, here's 0, here's 1, and right in the middle is 1/2. The closer a probability is to 1, this way, greater than half, the more likely the event is to occur. So if 3 of my 5 sections were red, 3/5 is greater than 1/2, so it's more likely. The closer it is to 0, the more unlikely. So my one red section out of the 5, 1/5 is less than 1/2, so it's more unlikely that I'm going to get that red. A probability of 1/2 means that the event is just as likely to happen as not to happen. If my spinner had 6 sections on it, 3 of those sections were green, the others were a different color, then it would be half. My chances of getting red would be half. Alright, drop my spinner. Let me get that because I want to show you something here. Alright, so let's put the spinner back up. It's a little different this time. There's my spinner. You'll notice I have numbers on my spinner also. So here's another example where we're talking about the number line. If it's less than half, that it's unlikely. If it's more than half, it's more likely. And if it's right at half, it's equally likely. So use the spinner to find the probability of the pointer stopping on 3 or 4. Now this is important because I'm using the word or. The probability of 3 or 4 equals 2/5. Okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want to know what my probability is to land on 3 or 4. So I have to group those together. What are my favorable outcomes? What is it that I want to spin? I want to spin 3 or 4. So I have 2 of those sections. One has a 3, one has a 4. So my favorable outcomes are 3 or 4. Either one will do. So it's 2. What are my total possible outcomes? You have to include your favorable outcomes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 sections, 5 different numbers. My total possible outcomes, I could spin a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, or a 5. The probability of my pointer stopping on 3 or 4 can be written as 2/5. It's very important that you remember 3 or 4. Either one of them will satisfy my favorable outcome. So it would be written as 2/5.